Welcome to Wired to Hunt's Whitetail How-Tos, where we provide a step-by-step tutorial for one important deer hunting task. Today I want to talk about how to identify a buck bedding area. Bucks spend a majority of their daylight hours bedded. All other movements, all other behavior patterns begins and ends where he calls home. So if you can identify those locations, you've got a great leg up on figuring out the rest of the puzzle. So there's a few things to look for: an obvious oval depression on the ground, leaf cover, different things like that kind of scooted off to the side, and you're often going to find a bunch of hairs in it, just like I have right here. Now that's going to tell you there was a bed. How do you determine whether this is a buck bed or not? Are there a bunch of beds all in the cluster right around there? 4, 5, 6, 7 beds all in this tight little zone? That's more indicative of a doe bedding area, because lots of times you have does living in family groups. If you find one solo big bed, or just a couple, that's going to be more likely a buck, because bucks most of the year like to be by themselves or with just a couple other bucks. Another thing you can look for are rubs. You're not always going to find a bunch of rubs in and around a buck bed, but lots of times it's a very good clue. Oftentimes you'll actually find rubs like right next to the bed, where that buck stands up, rubs around for a while, lays back down. Bucks typically get first dibs on the best locations, those locations that give you the most advantages from a security standpoint. Now, if you're in flat land, you might find bucks gravitating more towards the thickest, nastiest cover. In marshy ground, in wet ground, you're often going to find buck beds out in islands, fingers, or points of high ground that extend into a marshy area. I'm in an area that has a lot of hilly topography to it, big ridges, big outcroppings of rock, and it presents a lot of good buck bedding opportunities where a buck can bed up high on one of these knobs. He can look out across the valley and see any kind of danger coming from in front of him, and he can set up with the wind blowing it on his back and smell anything coming behind him. You're often going to find bucks bedding in places like this, on points, on knobs coming off of ridges where they can use that height to their advantage. So think about, where would a deer have more advantages than anywhere else? Those are oftentimes the places that the bucks secure as their bedrooms. So what you're really looking for when trying to make a best guess on whether this is a buck bed or not, look for those large oval depressions, confirm that there's hair in it, look for rubs coming in and out or right in the bed, and then think about the terrain. Does it give you that kind of ultimate security that a buck's looking for? Think about that when you're hunting, think about that when you're scouting, and it's going to take you a long ways. You can listen to the Wired Hunt podcast or the Wired Hunt Foundation's mini-series. You can get both of those weekly wherever you find your podcasts.